Welcome to Zeros and Ones, a podcast about philosophy, ancient wisdom, and the meaning of life. Here is your host, Becca Thompson. What's up, everybody? Hi, we're back, and we're still talking about arithmetic. And this is our second part on arithmetic, and I have to tell you, I feel a little weird talking this out with anybody. Thoughts are things, and even though I'm alone here, I know the power of putting this into a place called what we would call an online sphere, which we could unpack that phrase, right? Online, it's we're connected, right? We are connected into the matrix of all things, and we can choose. I mean, our very words talk about this, to be disconnected, right? I'm going to go, this last weekend was in Minnesota, something called MEA. It's a teacher education thing, and the kids always have it off. It's kind of morphed into a prolonged fall break for families. A lot of people, I want to disconnect. Well, what does that mean? Are you going to turn off the lights? Do you have a power cord running into your brain? Of course not. Right? But these words take on, their own meaning. So if you go online, I am on the line connecting all of us. And these ideas usually bounce around in my own head or in books that I've read. I don't share them that often because knowledge is power, and power is dangerous, and the truth is the most dangerous thing. It's dangerous not only in that people don't want to know the truth. Ain't that for real, right? But we have so denigrated the truth, and anyone who tries to speak it. Jesus, the Christ, was thought to be crazy. The apostles were thought to be crazy in the Acts of the Apostles, right? People thought they were speaking in tongues, and people thought they were nuts, When Jesus was questioned by Pontius Pilate is like, the people say this, the people they say that, and Jesus basically turned to Pilate, who was the governor of Judea, and said, yeah, but what do you think, right? And Jesus also posed that to the disciples. Who do you say that I am, right? Because there were rumors going around that this man is doing these things, saying these things, and is crazy. And I'll tell you right now at the front, we're in our third episode, fourth apart from the introduction. I take it very seriously to follow the path of the Christ. That does not mean I go to church. That does not mean what you probably think it means. But I will tell you now, I get comfort in following the path of the Christ, and I look at what great and deep and profound thinkers and theologians and philosophers did, and then what was done to them. And it's not a celebrity tour, okay? A celebrity tour, if you're universally loved or propped up as being incredible, like, it's manufactured by power, right? I mean, we're in an election year right now, and you can see the way different sycophants on either side will manipulate and massage language and vision to create a superhero, as it were, right? This is my superhero, and that's your superhero, right? Magneto versus Dr. X. But truth comes like a knife through all of it, like a hot knife. And it's scary when you stand for truth. And so saying these out loud gets me a little bit like, oh man, here we go. Here we go. Let's go. So we were at Yod, and all is number and all is mental, and about numbers. Okay, now I want to talk to you. I want to just say some words. We're going to think about the game telephone. Amen, Aumun, Om, one. Om, Aum, Audum. Just hear the sounds That's all we're going to say. I'm just planting seeds, okay? Just planting seeds. And there's a level of wanting this to be on auditory, although I really believe in the power of paper. I don't know if you're aware of this. Socrates lamented the advent of paper. So paper is, ancient papers are fibers. There's papyrus, but I can't remember the other, they're fibers, right? Mixed with water, squished into a paste, and then rolled out and dried. And those were our earliest papers, right? The earliest inks, plainly, was blood. And then we started to find different ink and pigmentation and sources where you could put a pigment into water and mix it together and come up with an ink, right? And then, of course, graphite, which is what we make our pencils out of, scrapes off. It's a very soft rock, and it scrapes off in kind of a uniform way. And that's how we get our implementations for writing. And Socrates didn't like that. He said that, it was going to really cost people their memory because they weren't going to commit to memory anything. They were just going to write it down. And there's a level of truth to that. We have invented things that make our lives easier and make our minds and our bodies less healthy. I'll say that again, and I mean this. We have invented things that make our lives easier, but our bodies and minds less healthy. I am not looking at the past with rose-colored glasses, but I am also not looking at it as a barbaric time. I'm looking at it as neutral, that human beings are the same, and it is the custom around us that has changed as we progress. So Socrates didn't like paper. But I am writing a book. I've written a book. I'm editing it now, called One, the Biography of All Things. And those are the topics we're going through. And we were halfway through arithmetic when I realized we kind of maybe needed a break. We needed a break. And so, because we were getting on time, so I thought, let's split this into 2 lessons. And I realized, this is interactive. You guys I'm declaring things in one episode, and then the next episode I'm changing it. Just because, I as a teacher, you always kind of tell yourself, okay, we've got to have the test by this day, right? Because like quarter grades are due or something. And you're like, we have to take an assessment by this day, or we have to get to this topic by this day. And then you break up the lessons, but you also have some space in between, like, okay, this one Wednesday, maybe it's a review day. But then when you get to that Wednesday, you realize, like, oh, no, we can adjust this, right? Or we can go, I've adjusted forward and back. So Socrates didn't like paper, but I think paper has its purpose the same way the internet does. Internet, net, plan, net, play net, plan, net, play net, net, internet, the net, the matrix. I'm just a woman in my home by myself who came up with these things from reading and living. What I'm saying is that words matter, and that everything is hiding in plain sight the truth of the idea that we are one. It's all right. It's literally in our words. It's in our words, and we pass them by like it's nothing. It's like there was a homeless man when I first moved to Los Angeles who wandered around the neighborhood. And my ex-husband and I would go running at night down 6th or Wilshire, right, in Los Angeles. And this man was like iconic in the neighborhood, right? And it had reached a point where most people just passed him by, right? That was literally like it's like the story of the Good Samaritan. All these people are passing by because we've just gotten so desensitized to the shame and the horror and the truth of what's going on, right? Versus wanting to sit down and help somebody. And this happens in our words on purpose. Whether it's I'm not trying to say it's a global evil entity like Dr. Evil in Austin Powers. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that they exist. They're here. They're in plain sight. And these words iterated for a reason. Okay? Why did the internet get called the internet? Well, it was started by physicists who were starting a network. Net. Like, think of a net, like fishermen, right? And then the work, you're going to work together. You're going to network. Like, that's how these words form. So I don't want to get, I mean, it's so meta, it will make you go insane. That's why my book is titled One, the Biography of All Things. Because everything is one and everything points back to that. And I mean everything. And the reason why I want to talk about this, and the reason why I feel so inspired to write this and say this and do this, is that I see people every day trapped in fear. And I can use politics as the state to do that. They're trapped in fear and moralizing. What if the only ethic is love, right? And we're going to get there. I promise we're going to get there. But what if that's it? And then you can say, well, what is that, right? And that, that's the hard part. Gosh, we're 11 minutes in and I haven't even talked about number yet. I'm talking about Socrates. What did he know? Come on, get out of here. So Hippasus. Let's talk about Hippasus and the lore of the Pythagoreans. I love it. I love this story. So Pythagoras ran a mystery school. Some people erroneously call it a cult, but cult, of course, is just culture, science. And now, like, honestly, the Pythagoreans were scientists. So I don't know if you know the background of science, and I could go on and on about my art, is that it was only recently accepted as being anything other than magic. I mean, to learn biology, to learn medicine, that now it's so fascinating to me how people will be like, well, I'm not a medical doctor, as though a doctor is like right next to God. Do you know the history of medicine? They were grave robbers who alchemists were just viewed as quacks, right? Nobody knew, but it was through the inquiry. And if you don't know this, the scientific method actually came out of a man, I'm blanking on his name right now. I'll get to it. We'll probably put it in the notes. Who was an advisor to Queen Elizabeth I. He was like, we need to be more, systematic about this, right? And yes, you do. It's like, I sometimes joke when I'm eating fruit, like whomever, I'm like, who figured out that this was healthy? How many people died eating poisonous berries to be able to tell me that a raspberry is safe? I don't know, right? These are the tracks of humanity that we all follow. But what I am arguing for in this entire podcast, and this, if you want to, I'm going to give away the answer before we get to the end. I'm just giving it away and hiding in plain sight, okay? Is that we have so many opportunities in our current society, in our current culture. We have so many things going for us, and yet we bludgeon each other to death in these systems that we created, which are not real. They're not real. They can be real, but they're created in many, many ways that are hurtful to us. And look no further than a lot of, air quotes, modern medicine. I mean, and to be plain, my sister and my father and my uncle are medical doctors, okay? A lot of people asked if I wanted to be a doctor, and I was like, hard pass. Did you tune in to the last episode where I talked about my surgery when I was cut open at 11 months old? Hard pass. No, thank you. No. If I did anything, though, it would be dermatology, because that's fascinating. The skin is fascinating. Okay, so, oh my gosh, Becca. We're having so much fun, you guys. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. I need more coffee, too. Okay, so Pythagoras, the Pythagoreans, Hippasus. Okay, so the Pythagoreans would be considered nowadays as scientists to some. They also, to some, might be considered a religious order. Back at the time, they were called a mystery school, and they had very hard rules. You were not allowed in without certain things. I mean, it's like a barrier now. It's like if you want to be part of my, let's say I start a club. Maybe I will start a club, and we talk about ideas, right? I don't want, this happens in political things all the time. I don't want you coming in and either A, protesting what we're trying to talk about, or B, going out and throwing it on Twitter and being like, look at these losers, right? What we want is to create a safe space. I've done this in theater many times, is to create a safe space where ideas are welcome. So there's a litmus to getting into the door, right? Hey, you have to prove that you're willing to do this. And, as a young actor, this was an audition to get the role in the play, right? Hey, are you worthy of this thing? Are you worthy for being part of us? In a lot of schools, you'd say this is the SAT, right? Hey, are you going to work hard? Are you going to do this and this? That's what that litmus is are you trustworthy to do the things that this institution, that this group of people is dedicated to, right? So if I started a school or started a group and we were going to discuss philosophy, I would want, bluntly, I would want people who genuinely wanted to learn, right? And I would genuinely want to learn from others. And we would over time, not right away, but over time you'd iterate into a sort of process to getting in and to proving your mettle, right? Like a feats of strength. So Pythagoras had that, and his mystery school was very dedicated. And mystery, like these ancient schools, like you did not talk about what happened on, we don't talk about Bruno, like whatever happened inside, that's just there. Well, so all is number, and number was science and was a religion. So, and they were ideals. So Pythagoras believed that all is number, and that numbers were perfect, and that numbers in fact couldn't be they were all divisible. Now I don't personally believe this story, but it's a fun lore. So Hippasus comes along, and there are two very famous shapes that give us two of our most famous irrational numbers. So we need to know what irrational is. So rational, rational, of the ratio, and ratio is just a fraction. So numbers that can be written as a fraction. Irrational, IR, that prefix IR, means that it cannot be written as a fraction. Okay, so the discovery of the irrational numbers, according to lore, is due to Hippasus. So Hippasus so we have to get to our most famous shapes. Well, there are three impregnably famous shapes that create most of everything. Although I would argue there's anything up to 10. I mean, let's be plain. But we've got the circle, which would be like 1. There's an 1 and the infinite, depending on how you're. I mean, that's the whole point of this entire podcast. So we'll get into that another time. You can't have a 3-dimensional shape or a 2-dimensional shape from 2, but 3 is of course a triangle and 4 is a square. So from circles we get, what's our famous irrational number associated with circles? Yep, pi, P-I, not P-I-E, P-I, pi. It's a Greek letter, but it was known way before that. 3.1415926 blah 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 blah. People have. There's a YouTube video with a channel called Number File, and they literally have a mile of pi, and they just write it out. It is infinite, even as it is profoundly necessary for everything. Well, there's another one that Hippasus was like, according to lore, right? This is a fun legend story, but I don't believe it's true. The Pythagoreans are known famously for their theorem, of course, right? The Pythagorean theorem. Can you rattle it off from 7th, 8th grade? A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Okay, but there's a second part where the triangle is a right triangle, A and B are the legs, and C is the hypotenuse. So the square of the legs of a triangle are equal to the square of the hypotenuse, and hypotenuse is the diagonal of a quadrilateral or a square. Okay, quad 4. Are you like, oh my gosh, Becca, you're getting me back into middle school math? So the diagonal can be known. Okay, well, so Hippasus, what Hippasus did, again, but it doesn't matter if Hippasus did it or somebody else, it's true. You do a 1 by 1 square, right? Just a square. Square by definition, all the sides are the same. It's not the same as a quadrilateral's definition. We can get into that. But 1 squared plus 1 squared equals the diagonal squared. Well, of course, if you do the arithmetic, you get that the diagonal is equal to the square root of 2. Okay? Hippasus did what's called a proof by contradiction. Okay? We talked a little bit the other day about proof. And proof is much more squishy than most people want to believe. Okay? Proof is much more squishy. And by that I mean that it is not as straightforward. You want to say, well, this is proven. Tell me what that means. Because you probably don't know, and I guarantee you the people using that word are using it to try to manipulate you. That's just facts. So proof by contradiction requires, again, thought. Thoughts are things. Thinking is number, is mental, is everything. QED. So Hippasus was like, yo, guys, let's claim that it can be written as a rational number. So a over b is equal to the square root of 2. You know, we square both sides. Oh, but then this would be a squared equals 2 times b squared. So that means that a is an even number because anything times 2 is even. So that means a is even. Oh yeah, there's the contradiction is saying that not only can it be written as a rational number, but that that a and b are relatively prime, which also is a phrase that needs to be unpacked from math. That's part of it. Okay, I'm not going to get into all the relatively prime. It means they have no factors. They have no common factors. So then you go, okay, well, that means A has to be even, and then you do the other side, and you go, well, that means that B has to be even, but A and B can't be even because we just said they have no common factors. So I have just contradicted myself. Therefore, the only legitimate answer is that the square root of 2 cannot be written as a fraction. Okay? And you can look this up if you really want to know the Hippasus thing, right? But I want you to know the logic of the proof. The proof is we set this thing up. It fell apart. Therefore, the only logical conclusion is that our setup was wrong and our precept was wrong, which is that the square root of 2 can be written as a fraction, is rational. So it cannot be. And according to legend, this so blew the mind of the Pythagoreans in their school, in their mystery school. They went out and they murdered Hippasus. They ripped him limb from limb because it shattered their worldview because all is number. Okay? This story illustrates to me what happens when truth and logic come up against dogma. That even way back in the Pythagoreans, all is number, numbers are perfect, number can be written as a fraction, and Hippasus says, except for here's this really obvious, it's the diagonal of a square. And we were the ones who came up with the a squared plus b squared equals c squared stuff, right? It's the diagonal of a square. It's one of the most obvious numbers, right? We're seeing it. We can physically see the diagonal of a square. How many buildings are built with this length, right? And yet it is an infinite number. Like, let that sit with you. I know that you learned this in middle school or in high school, and it just passed you by and you didn't care. But let's hope that decades later, if you're listening to this, you can unpack the mystery of what that is. This number never ends. It is infinite. You could start counting all the decimal places of the square root of 2 right now and tell your family, I'm just gonna sit right here. And then you will watch as the world passes you by and you will die sitting in that chair counting. That's what infinity is. And yet it is this simple number, along with, of course, pi, which comes from a circle. So infinity and the singularity are at the same place. Okay? So here's the end of our arithmetic talk, which it's one chapter in my book, but it's clearly 2 episodes, 30 minutes long, but I did go off about Socrates and paper. If everything is number, and I promise you everything is, what happens when numbers break down or make no sense. What is that? And I promise you, okay, if you want to live the tracks of life, if you want to go on the Oregon Trail and just let your wagon follow the footpaths of somebody else's wagon and get your 401k and get your retirement benefits and show up to your 9 to 5 and have your, work hard, play hard, beers on the weekend, I'm not going to judge you for that. But if you want to take, which pill is it? The blue pill? If you want to take the blue pill, is it that one? I should check. Then listen to this. Because you will feel insane, but then suddenly everything, and I mean everything, makes sense. It's like the C.S. Lewis quote. It's not that because of it, that I can see it. It's that by it, I can see everything else. And when you're no longer trapped mentally in the mental traps and the mental push and pull of the duality, and we're going to get to the number 2, of the duality that we've set up for ourselves, truly, that is the freedom. That is the freedom. That is the freedom. So I actually forget our next topic. I think it's geometry. It is geometry. So tune in next time. Who knows if geometry is going to take 1, 2, or 3 topics. But all is number. All is number. And I'm going to tell you, I'll leave you with this. I'll leave you with this little anecdote, and then we'll say goodbye for today. When I was getting my Bachelor's of Science in Mathematics, I was actually studying engineering before I embraced, I'll just get a math degree. And it was the first day of class, my junior year, and I had 3 classes that day. If you were in the Institute of Technology, most of your classes were Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right? We would have labs, but we didn't have the Tuesday, Thursday classes. And so I had 3 classes on the first day, on the Monday. I don't entirely, I believe it was Calc 4, linear algebra, and I forget what the last one was. It may have been some sort of leftover engineering class. And in all 3 classes, we proved the existence of the number 1 using limits, and that we approached 1 and then we could presume 1. And I remember thinking to myself, at that time I was 20 years old, and I remember being really angry at the end of that day, and I was like, I have gone my entire life accepting that this is true and did everything by this, and now you're telling me I have to prove it's real? It didn't make any sense to me, and it made me actually angry. So if that's you right now, just know that even 1, which is the title of my book and which is a precept of counting, even 1 has to be proven to be true. And from there, everything is counting. Okay. Thank you again so much for joining along. I'm incredibly grateful to anybody who listens to this, to anybody who considers the existence of all things. And, if you found something that I don't know about, because I don't know if you're aware of this, the world is infinitely large with an infinite past and fascinating stories, which, I believe all of them hold a germ of truth, or they wouldn't continue to be told. But it doesn't mean that it's like lockstep, I'm drinking my coffee kind of truth. But, I don't know. The sun is out. Who knows what's happening? Okay, until next time, thank you all so much. Have a good one. Thank you so much for listening to Zeros and Ones with Becca Thompson. Please subscribe and share.